Welcome to the Leslie Hawkins podcast. Each week, my guest and I discuss one pivotal moment in their life, what they learned from it, and their words of wisdom. Imagine being adopted and deciding to search for your birth parents. You order a DNA test kit from 23andMe, but it sits on your desk for 2 months. Every day, you stare at the box and wonder, what will it mean if I send this in? One day, you finally do, and everything changes. What felt like a long shot suddenly turns into a reunion with your birth father and an entire extended family you never knew. And if that's not unbelievable enough, while meeting your father for the very first time, he helps you find your birth mother. A lifetime of wondering who they were, answered in less than a week. This is a story about courage, connection, and the ties that shape who we are. So welcome to the Leslie Hawkins podcast. I'm really excited to have our guest with us today, Chris Miall. So Chris is a sales director at Adidas. He's actually been there for 20 years. Started as an assistant product manager in soccer and then has worked his way really throughout the organization to where he is today. Beyond the professional life, he is a snowboard instructor, a baseball coach, and a devoted family man. And Chris, I have to tell you, so Chris and I have worked together for 11 years or so while I was at Adidas, and I have very cool memory of you. The very first time that I really recognized you, and I actually have a photo of it in my camera roll, but that was in about 10 years ago on Tracksuit Day. Now, for those who are not in the Adidas world, Tracksuit Day is a day where everybody globally, like every associate, wears a tracksuit, and it's in commemoration of the founder's birthday, Adolf Dassler. And on this particular day, you were hosting the town hall for Tracksuit Day, and you were standing on stage in a pastel color block tracksuit. Like it was pinks and blues and yellows and greens. It was awesome. And the reason that that memory stuck with me was it was the first time that I thought, okay, I've found my people. I had come from a corporate environment that was khakis and button downs, very traditional, to, oh my God, there's somebody standing on stage in a pastel tracksuit. Like, this is amazing. So for that, I thank you, because you were definitely part of the journey there. And you started me out on the right foot. So tons of fun.
I got to tell you, having been there for 20 years, being able to wear tracksuits to the office has been a huge reason why. Like, to me, that's $10,000 a year. Like, right. I'd rather make $10,000 or less and just be comfortable at work than I had a job at a corporate place before Adidas, and I would wake up every morning wishing it was around SARS time that I had SARS, so I wouldn't have to go to work because it was so corporate, so stuffy, dressy pants. Anyway, Adidas has been a wonderful place to work for 20 years and filled with wonderful people and having fun, working hard, and that's what's made it worthwhile.
Getting up every day, talking about sport, not a bad thing, right?
100%. It's great.
So good. So this podcast is built around one question, which is, what is one pivotal moment in your life? And the reason that I came up with that one question was because while we all have multiple pivotal moments, during those moments, I feel like people feel like they're the only ones that are experiencing it. And I'm hoping through all of the stories that we're sharing through this podcast that people will realize, actually, no, other people have gone through this and I'm not the only one. And really, there's real power and strength in sharing stories. So that's what we're doing here today.
Looking forward to it.
So let me ask you, Chris, what is that one pivotal moment in your life?
So to your point, there's lots of them, and they all kind of led to the one we'll talk about today, which was the decision to actively pursue connecting with my biological family. So I'm adopted. I've always been adopted. I
Hmm.
knew I've adopted from a young age. Lived a life of wonder, and then in I guess 2 and a bit years ago now, uh, through some nudging of a colleague, I decided to purchase the 23andMe package and see where that journey would take me. It was funny that my colleague and I had talked about it because his family had gone through it. His mother was adopted and had found her biological father using the 23andMe. And he told me this two or three different times, but for whatever reason, on this Friday afternoon, sitting at the office having a chat, I said, "Yeah, I'm doing it." So
Hmm.
I pulled out my phone, I ordered it. It came in. I probably sat on it for a month or two once it came in. Again, just not like making that commitment to go for it after 44ish years of
Right.
wonder and not doing it was, just take it a little persuasion. But then one day, I don't know why, I just ripped open the package, so to speak, tore off the band-aid, spat in the jar and sent it off. And then the journey really started. The app, I know it's probably a defunct app and brand now. They've had a little bit of trouble at 23andMe, but during the time, you get daily updates on where your package was and what was happening. So it's kind of a journey that way. And then I'll never forget this. Everyone remembers where they were on 9/11.
Yeah.
I'll always remember exactly what I was doing when I got the notification. It was July 1st, Canada Day weekend. We're at the cottage. I was watching Cocaine Bear with my brother-in-law, which let me tell you, not the,
No,
the best movie of all time.
no.
But so I was scrolling around on my phone and got a notification on my email app that said, "Hey, your results are in from 23andMe." So I clicked on the button, and then right there it said, "Hey, here's your biological father. Here's your biological sister. Do you want to connect with them?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." So I pushed the button, and then right there, I mean, there they were in data form. There's your family tree, and there I am, and there these two people are. And so, I mean, to backtrack this story a little bit, I'd always had information
Mhm.
about my family. It wasn't the first time I'd done some searching. When I was about 18 or 19ish, they opened the adoption laws in Alberta, and
Mhm.
so you had to make a decision if you wanted to block your information. You could submit documentation to say, "Sorry, I don't want to be found." Otherwise, the adoption records were open. So at that time, I applied for my information, and I got old school handwritten forms that had redaction lines all throughout it,
Mm.
but it provided me quite a bit of information on my family. And I have a friend who's a private investigator who doesn't have a friend that's a private investigator, but I do. And so he'd done some work for me, and my biological mother was a ghost, couldn't find anything on her. And then we couldn't find anything on my biological father, but based on his name, but there was some links and hits to
Mm.
a slightly different name. And at the time, I've always been this person that if it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be. And it didn't feel like it was supposed to be because it wasn't easy. So I let it go. And so there was a couple instances in my life where I got close. My wife and I would Google names and find
Mm.
different names along the way. Um, and never really got anything concrete. So finally, here I was looking at something like, science driven. This is your biological father. That is your
Right.
biological sister. And so I clicked the button, and then you could, just like a dating app, type them a message and see if they respond. So this is like midnight when this came in.
Right.
Everyone is asleep except for my brother-in-law who's watching Cocaine Bear, oblivious to what's going on. And so I sent them both a note, and then I went to bed. I lay in bed, wide awake, staring at the
Yeah.
ceiling, wondering what was going to go on. And then the next morning I woke up, there was nothing. So I went through the day. I told my wife that morning, who didn't share with anyone else, but brought her into the loop of what was going on. And then I got a hit response from my biological sister, which was kind of like, "Hey, nice to meet you."
Right.
Up until that moment, I didn't actually consider that. I mean, one, I never knew if I had siblings, but I never
Mm.
considered that if I did, they wouldn't know about me. Because
Oh,
I've always known, right? Since I was
right.
born, I've always known that I was adopted. So I just figured that everyone would have shared that information. But that was pretty silly thought because now I understand more details around
Mhm.
so anyway, so turns out she did know about me, but she'd only known about me for a year or so. And I assume that when her and her dad, my dad, did the 23andMe, he probably used that moment to be like, oh, by the way,
So
this
here's the
could
thing.
happen. Yeah, this could
Right.
happen.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it was wild. And then my biological father finally sent a note to the point, he said, this is kind of weird. I was like, yeah, of course it's weird. This is, who knew that this would happen? But
Mhm.
also, this is exactly what I wanted to happen because I
Mhm.
wanted to know. And then there was no response for like 2 days. And
Ooh.
so we're at the cottage on vacation, and I was, going through the stress and
Yes.
freaking out. And I think I was starting to turn a little bit on the kids. They misbehave a little bit, and I was taking that stress out on them.
Mhm.
So finally, I just wrote, I was like, guys, here's my phone number. Someone needs to call me. Like, we need
Yes.
to have this conversation. Let's go. And again, like, I understand they were nervous. They didn't know what to
Yes.
expect either.
And what
But
to
in that moment, I
say?
was being super selfish, and I just wanted me, 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 me,
Mhm.
me. So anyway, he called me that night, just as we were sitting down for dinner, and for 3 hours we just talked.
Wow.
Yeah, nothing like what I expected. So again, the documentation you get, the information that my parents were able to share with me, it had all been filled out by my biological mother. And so I never really knew if he had any interest in being a part of the
Mhm.
relationship. Um, the stereotypes that exist, the stories you hear, the way that
Mhm.
movies are, like you build this story in your head of how it's going to go or what these people are like. And he was nothing like anything that I ever expected. So very loving, very caring, very happy to found me, um, which was
Yes.
a really great experience. So we agreed that we would continue to have communication and see where that took us.
Mhm.
He did at that time mention that he'd always wanted to find my biological mother, that they'd lost contact shortly after my birth, and that he'd done some searches on his own over the years and hadn't really had much luck
Mhm.
finding her or any of her family. So that was that for the time being. We talked a few more times. Then I had the opportunity to go to Portland, where our North American office is, for work. Uh, he lives in Fort McMurray, Alberta, and we agreed that we would meet in Edmonton, where he had a
Mhm.
cousin who lived, and we would see where everything went. So, my wife, before I left, said two things to me. She said, "Chris, don't have your kidneys taken from your body while you sleep, and don't get any family tattoos before before I get to meet your family." And so again, I have many tattoos, so that explains that.
Yeah.
And my biological father has kidney failure, so he's
Got it.
working through that, and he's on the list and hoping to get a new kidney at some point. But you know, the idea was you're going to meet a bunch of strangers. We don't know
Yes.
anything about these people, so don't have your kidneys harvested. So I flew into Portland. I got there very late at night, or sorry, into Edmonton. Got there at 1 o'clock in the morning, and he was there waiting for me.
Wow.
And so we met there in the airport and had a big hug and kind of stood in each other's silence and just
Mhm.
kind of got to know each other. So that's kind of, I mean, that's the start of a wild weekend. The origin story, as I've come to tell it.
Yes.
And so we were staying at a cousin's house. Wonderful woman, Angela. But I went into their house at 2 o'clock in the morning
Ooh.
and didn't know what I was expecting. Like, I'd spoken to him a little before I left and said, "Hey, like, should I get a hotel for this trip?
Mhm.
Like, what are we doing here?" He said, "No, no, you can stay at my cousin's house." And I said, "Listen, if things get weird, I'm a grown up. I'll just leave, but
Right.
hopefully everything will be cool." So I went anyway, went in and I went straight to bed, and he went to his room with his wife. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, I had to use the washroom. So I snuck out in my boxers in the basement, and I heard a noise to my left. And I looked over, and there was my cousin standing in her pajamas as I stood in my boxers as she was letting her dog out in the back. So that was our first meeting at 5 o'clock in the morning. Shortly thereafter, I went upstairs. Her whole family's awake. Got to meet her two children, her husband. Again, everyone very warm and welcoming. So that morning, we went to do dialysis for my father. So we had
Okay.
4.5 hours or so to chat and talk, and again get to know each other because we really hadn't talked that many times on the phone before that.
Mhm.
That afternoon, I met my biological sister, her
Mm.
boyfriend. We had dinner together. It was very nice. It turns out that I have a biological brother as well with
Oh,
him. We've yet to meet, unfortunately.
okay.
Just he works out in the oil field, so whenever
Yes.
I've been there, he hasn't been able to make it. It turns out that I have another brother who was given up for adoption 6 months after I was born. So that's another family member out there in the
Okay.
wild that I've yet to meet, but hopefully one day we'll
Mhm.
find a way to get to know him. He has never connected with my father, so uh, there's another one of me out in the wild. We like to say. The next day, we went out and I met my grandmother, cousins, uncles, nieces, nephews. I probably met 40 people. I like to joke that I was the show pony that had been trotted out into the middle because people were coming from everywhere to
Right.
meet me. It's amazing how comfortable it felt and how it felt like I'd known them for my whole life.
That's incredible.
It's a very large family. There's been lots of, he had three brothers. My grandmother had three or four siblings. They've all got,
Mhm.
like, there's just so many of them out there, which was great because they all wanted to get to know me and meet me, and I got to meet them. And it's funny when you're adopted, and again, I can only speak from being adopted. I can't speak from
Mhm.
anything else, but there's always a question like, what do I have brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
What are my parents like? Is who I am today nature or nurture? Like
Wow.
how did I become me? And so it was really interesting to get to meet all these people. My biological grandmother basically sat me down next to her and she wouldn't let go of my arm for the whole time that I was there. She'd always, she said, I've always wondered where you were.
Mm.
I was hoping this day would come. Again, very loving, and it feels very natural. I've been back to Edmonton one time since then, and a lot of them came to see me, and we just sat around and played cards
Yeah.
basically for 2 days, and like we'd known each other our whole lives.
Right.
So
Like you hadn't missed a beat.
yeah, so that part was really great. And now, if that had been the whole weekend story of the origin, then that would have been a really awesome weekend.
Yes.
But in the first hour of us being in the dialysis center, my father went back into his story about, I wish we could find your mother. This is already such a great experience. I'd love you to meet her. He said, over the time, all I've ever been able to find is this one Facebook post of her sister, who for a while did a personal training thing.
Mhm.
And he opened up his laptop or his iPad and he showed it to me. And said to him, well, did you ever try this phone number that's right here? And his answer was, "Well, no, why would I do that? This is clearly old. There's nothing
Mhm.
new, nothing recent on it." And I said, "Well, it's free." So I pulled out my phone and I called, and a gentleman answered the phone, Wayne, and I was like, "Hey, is Brenda there, please?" And he said, "Well, Brenda who?" And I mean, we've all seen
Yes.
numbers show up on our cell phones that we don't
Mhm.
know, and with all the scams in the world, most of the time I delete it. I'm in sales, and if I don't have your number in my phone, I don't answer it. So
Right.
but he did, for whatever reason, he did. Living in Alberta, he saw a Toronto number and he thought, I'll answer this. So he gave me a little bit of a hard time. Brenda, who? And I said, well, I don't know her married name, but her maiden name would have been Millington. And he paused for a second. And when you just have someone on the ropes, I was
Yes.
like, I got you. I don't know
Yeah.
what I got, but I know I got you. And so I just launched into my story. I said, well, I'm actually not looking for Brenda per se. I'm looking for her sister Kathy because she's my mom. And he paused and they said, well, I know exactly who you are because I was in the hospital when you were born.
Oh, wow.
So I went to Edmonton, not expecting anything other than meeting my biological father and his family. And now all of a sudden, in the first hour, really, of being awake, I'm connected to my biological mother,
Yes.
who was a ghost, through all
Mhm.
of the searches we'd ever done. On that note, I know now that I had found my biological father probably 10 or 15 years before with the information that I
Oh,
had
okay.
um, through Facebook and different things. That we were never 100% sure because his first name is Bernard and he goes by Dale, his middle name. And
Oh.
so, but I wouldn't have known that. And all
Yeah.
of my information only listed him by his first name. I know now that for sure I'd found him, but I never actioned it before because none of the paperwork spoke from
Mhm.
him about him. So for all I knew, he didn't even know that I had been born. I now know all that's not true, and I probably wasted 15 years of a potential relationship because I didn't pull the trigger. But again, we're talking about these big moments in your life,
Yes.
and so it wasn't the right time until it was. And so
Yes.
anyway, so I'm talking to Wayne on the phone, and he tells me that he was in the hospital. So he was dating my biological mother's sister at the time, now married, and she had been living in Fort McMurray alone in going back to do her grade 12 after living in Quebec. She finished CEGEP and then decided that she wanted to go to university in Alberta, so she needed to get her grade 12. So she moved back to Fort McMurray, left her family behind. Uh, Things happened with my father. I became part of the family, so to speak. And she was doing school, living on her own, had a job at the grocery store, was basically crushing life as a 17-year-old with a baby in
Yeah.
her belly. So pretty wild story. And then I guess at one point her sister moved back, and that's why they were all there when I was born. And so anyway, I'd say, hey, I'm in Edmonton. I'm here meeting my biological father. We're at doing dialysis right now because he's kind of sick. Um, but that's my story. I'm from Toronto and so on and so forth. And he said, well, all of your mother's biological family, so your just two sisters, her brother, her mother, all live in Edmonton. They've all moved back to Edmonton from the different places they've lived in Canada over the last couple of decades. And if you're here, I'd love to
Mhm.
introduce you to them. Uh,
Whoa.
and so, yeah, it was like a face melter right there because again, I had no expectations of that happening.
Yeah.
So I said, listen, yeah, I mean, I have some time on Sunday before my flight goes back. Tomorrow, Saturday, we're going to be pretty busy. But if it works for you guys and you want to pull the troops together, I'd love to meet them.
Mhm.
Let's stay in touch. And I said, but, I'm also kind of looking for Kathy. So
Right.
do you know where she is?
Mhm.
And again, at this point, I was like, is she alive? Is she dead? I had no
Mhm.
idea. And he said, well, isn't it funny that you live in Toronto? Because 3 years ago, your mother moved to Toronto to be closer to her two daughters. So her two daughters had gone to university in Montreal. And after that, they chose not to go back to the US and they wanted to live in Toronto. And so Kathy and her husband, who had lived in the US for most of her children's lives, had moved to Toronto. And as he said, yeah, she lives in a condo down by the lake. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I live by some condos by the lake.
Mm.
Um, so hey, if you can put us in contact, that'd be great. You have my phone number. I'd love to talk to her and get to know
Mhm.
her. So let me know. And he said, as soon as we hang up the phone, I'm going to call her. I'm going to tell her about this call, and we'll see where that goes.
Right.
So now I'm like frazzled.
Right.
It was one thing to fly across the country, knowing that I was going to meet my biological father. I called my wife, and she's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Pfft, I think so. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Things are happening so
This is
fast.
crazy.
It was crazy. Um, but yeah, it was crazy. I don't know how else to explain it. It is like you always are curious, as I said.
Mm.
You have a million versions in your head of how this is going to go, and this clearly wasn't one of them. Um, you always wonder, is that, people walking down the street, you're kind of looking, do you look like me? I know that's how both of them were looking, does that person look like me? Always wondering, looking, searching. And so all of a sudden it was just like, too fast, too furious. Things were happening a million miles a minute. So
Mm.
a couple minutes later, I got a text message and it just said, so I hear you're in Edmonton. You want to talk? I said, yeah, I want to. Yeah, let's get on with this.
Yeah.
So I called her and we chatted. And I think, again, this is just my opinion. When someone goes through something like that, there is a lot of emotion, obviously, that goes through it,
Mhm.
and you throw up some protective walls. And so she was quick to tell me, hey, I've never told my children about you. My husband knows. I will obviously tell them. And we agreed we really
Mhm.
wanted to meet and see where things would go. But she said, I haven't talked about this a lot in my life because there's so much stigma that goes around to women who quote unquote give a baby up.
Yeah.
And I tried to shut that down as
Mm.
quickly as
Yeah,
possible
absolutely.
because, as I explained to you earlier, being 17 years old,
Mhm.
pregnant, living alone, and trying to go to school, having a job, that to me is a superhuman. She's a superhero, and that's how I will always think of her. Not that making the opposite decision is easy. I'm sure neither decision is an easy one to do, but she chose the one that has given me this life. So
Yeah. Forever grateful.
forever grateful.
Yes.
Yeah, so forever grateful. So we agreed that we would meet, and I asked her permission to meet her family because I thought that was a little strange that I'd meet literally everyone that she's related to before I met
Except
her.
her, yes.
But I was like, I don't know when I'm going to be back in Edmonton,
Right.
and they're all here. So she said, absolutely, go for it. So on Sunday, I drove over to Wayne's house and Wayne and Brenda, and I met my grandma on the on my mom's side, all three siblings, spouses, children, cousins, and again, super welcoming. I was there for 2 or 3 hours, and we just talked. And they had lots of questions about me and wanted to know
Mhm.
about how I grew up. And the one thing that everyone's been really thankful for is my parents who adopted
Yes.
me and raised me fantastically and gave me the life that I never would have had growing up in those conditions. And so that was
Mm.
a affirmation, I guess, that hey, dum dum, don't forget what a great life you had, because I think we
Mhm.
can all be guilty sometimes of finding things that are wrong with our families, and that was just a a good reminder of what a great life I have lived
Mhm.
in a loving family. And so I left Edmonton, flew home on Sunday night. On Monday, shortly after work, Kathy, my biological mom, walked into my living room in Toronto because it turns out she lives 2 kilometers away from me.
What?
Yeah, I live just just north of the lake, and she lives straight line between my house and the lake. Of all three of her children that live in Toronto, she moved the closest to me without knowing it. There's a Tim Hortons between our house. There's a Sobeys between our house. There's a running, if anyone's from Toronto and runs along the lake or walks along the lake or cycles, like that's where I do most of my exercising. So
Mhm.
there is 100% certainty in my mind that we had crossed paths.
Absolutely.
For a short while, she was working just around the corner from where I would meet every Friday morning with a running group and go for a run, less than a kilometer away on the same street as the hospital where my children were born, and where we unfortunately visit far too often because
Mhm.
they get injured. But
Yes.
so she, like, we existed in the same space for sure. We just never knew it. So I met her on the Monday. I met her two daughters on the Wednesday because Halloween was in the middle. And that's the crazy origins weekend story that, again, not did it change my life? It did for sure. Um, did every, moment in my life lead to that moment one way or another? Again, I think it did. Has obviously altered my life in the way I knew it ever since for the last 2.5 years.
Absolutely. That's a hell of a week.
Yeah, it was a lot. It
That
was
is
a
a
lot.
lot.
It was a lot.
That's a bit of an understatement.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Wow. So thank you for sharing. And I'm a little bit gobsmacked that it happened all in such a tight timeline. And
Yeah.
I can only imagine the emotional roller coaster that you were on. And then I also, as a mom, I put myself in the shoes also of your biological mom. I get in that phone call from Wayne or the text and something that had been kept quiet for so much of your life. And it's incredible that you live so close together.
Yeah, she ironically, within minutes of speaking to me, her daughter showed up at her work just to say, "Hey, bring her a coffee." And I guess Kathy was like, "Well, no time like the present,"
Yes, I just
and
talked to
said,
you.
"Surprise."
Yeah.
Uh, and I think at first, there's, again, I don't want to speak for them, but I
Mm-hmm.
know that there was probably a little bit of, I don't know if resentment's the right word, but how could you not tell us this
Yeah.
story? How are we just finding out now? Um, but there's a right, like I said, there's a right time and place for everything, and that was
Exactly.
the time and the place. And they could have gone their whole lives and never known, and we may never have found each other. But now that we have, we're trying trying to figure it all out together, and
Yes.
how. And that's the one thing that's really, I don't know, interesting. But I always had a vision of how it would go, and meeting these people and my family, and did I have brothers or sisters, like I said, but I never really thought of what would happen afterwards.
Yes.
And and I've talked with a lot of people about this, but half of me is the little kid who says, "Hey, you found me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Love me. Let's make up for
Yeah.
a lot. You're my siblings. Love me.
Mhm.
Want to do things with me. And then there's the adult in me who has his own family, who struggles to make time at best to keep my wife and my
Mhm.
two children and I together, running from sports to
Right.
whatever it is, work, travel, and then making time for my parents. I have a
Mhm.
sister who lives in Alberta with two kids who we love,
Right.
but I don't really talk to them all that often or spend that much time with them. And then pressure, and it's only pressure within my own mind. There's no pressure for them, but to
Mhm.
find and develop a relationship with these 40 people that I just met that are all
Yeah.
part of my blood, um, and that's a struggle. To be
Mhm.
frank, like it's
Yes.
just one. It's a struggle for me to try and figure out, is the adult in me right or is the kid in me right? Like, should people be making the effort because I'm the one who was quote unquote lost? Like I'm the one that was missing from this equation, and now here I am. So welcome me and bring me in.
Mhm.
But then I don't really have the time to change my entire life and bring
Yes.
these people in. So it's a constant battle, and I don't think I ever, as a kid and young adult, I never contemplated what that would be like.
Yeah.
Uh, because I really only ever thought about was meeting them.
Right.
And
Only
so,
the first step.
yeah, yeah, I didn't see the whole thing.
No.
Um, so anyway, I'd say it's good, at least with my biological parents, with Kathy and Dale. Um, I really need to be better. I do at communicating with Dale. He lives again in Fort
Mhm.
McMurray, so it's really just phone calls and text messages, and we need to be better at that. I need to try and get out there a little bit more. He can't travel that much, if at
Right.
all, because he needs to be
So.
close to the dialysis.
Mhm.
But so he hasn't met he hasn't met Natalie or my kids, and he really wants to, and that whole side does, but it's not easy when they live on the other
Mhm.
side of the world, so to speak. And then Kathy is interacting nicely with the family, getting to, she lives close, so she
Yes.
comes to my son's sports. She comes over quite often and spends time with us, and her husband Dave is great too. But then none of the siblings,
Yes.
we really don't interact,
Okay.
um, which is something I definitely want to be better at and do more of. But again, everyone's got their own lives.
Yes.
Two just got married, and
Mhm.
one travels. And anyway, it's just life,
It's
right?
hard.
It's
Yeah.
it's life. So the one thing that I've learned through this process is don't put unrealistic expectations on yourself.
Mhm.
It'll just happen, right?
Right.
And the best family situations, I think, are organic, and
Yeah.
the best things in life. So are organic, and they just happen when they're supposed to happen. But for the first 6 months to a year, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and
Mhm.
really struggling and on how to do this the right way.
Mhm.
And now I realize that there isn't a right way.
There isn't
You know,
really
you just
one.
got to kind of roll with it.
Right. There is no formula. Wow. I have like 1,000
Let's do
questions.
it. Let's go.
So, my first one is, if we were to go back from your earliest memory, were you always told that you were adopted?
Yeah, good
Okay.
question. Because yeah, there's lots of people that find out,
That don't
that
till
would do
later.
23 and me and be like, "What do you mean my biological father
Mhm.
isn't my father?"
Mhm.
So yeah, my parents told me I was adopted before I truly understood what being adopted meant.
Mhm.
Um, my parents are both university professors. My mother is a sociology professor and devoted most of her career to the study of adoption, for obvious reasons.
Very
Although
nice.
they weren't obvious to me until I was an adult, but
Right.
but
Yes.
I get it now. I get it now. Um, and yeah, so I always knew. And the probably my first real memory of that is I remember being, I don't know, kindergarten, grade one, whatever it was, on a school bus, and the boy next to me, Mike Janu, still remember his name. He said, "Well, yeah, if you're adopted, what did the orphanage look like?" And so here we are with two different
Wow.
concepts of what being adopted meant. He
Right.
obviously thought that, you go through an orphanage, and
Mhm.
I had no idea what an orphanage was, because I was adopted at 6 weeks old. I'm sure I spent some time in the
Mhm.
hospital, or under someone else's care while they found my parents to partner me up with. But my whole life has been with my parents.
Mhm.
And so I just remember at that time, that was the first time that I realized that I was different, than the traditional nuclear family,
Mhm.
which I think in modern day, there's so many definitions of what family
Yeah.
is. But at that time, there weren't. It wasn't. You had a mom and a dad and a brother and a sister, and that's the way things went.
Hmm.
And we were just different from that. So knowing that from the get go, I think my parents were really good at letting me know if I ever wanted their support to find anyone or do anything. They would be there to support me. And over the different years, when
Yes.
there's different moments of, like I said earlier, the adoption records being opened,
Okay.
um, looking into them, reading the paperwork that came, they were just as interested as I was, I think, into understanding it. They knew a certain story that they'd been told about um, the ages of my parents, the backgrounds of them, but really not much more than that. So it was a journey that we were sort of taking together. But at the
Hmm.
same time, in my heart, I always believed that while they were open with me, they probably didn't want it to happen,
Yeah.
and they might not love the idea of it going down. So I was first going out to visit with my biological father, we had a really long conversation. I remember sitting in my car outside of a burrito shop, having. It's funny, you remember where you are.
You
These key
do.
moments in life,
Yes.
talking to them and truly making sure that they were okay with what I was about to do. Because again, 46 years now. Excuse me. Uh, they're my parents.
Yes.
They've made me the person that I am today. And I truly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. So, I love them and I don't want to anger them or hurt them in any
Yes.
shape or way, but it was still something I had to do. And I was
Hmm.
going to do it, but I needed
Hmm.
to figure out how we were going to do it and not truly like break their hearts.
Yeah.
So anyway, they were very supportive. I think it's been more of a challenge for them since we all got to know each other and since Kathy
Yes.
came on the scene, because she's able to be around more.
Yeah.
And at first, after the big weekend, we had a quick dinner one night and we all got around and it was great and they got to know each other. And then there was this key moment where there was another opportunity to get together, and I could sense that it was just too soon. And so I
Hmm.
finally called my mom on it, and she admitted that yeah, it was a little too much too quick.
Hmm.
And that I think actually made things a lot better,
Right.
because sometimes people are people pleasers, and my mom is definitely a people pleaser and wants to please me and would have said anything to
Mm.
make me happy, but it wouldn't necessarily made her happy. So for the first time I felt like she was putting herself first, and that actually gave me a lot of respect.
Yes.
Not that I didn't already have it, but for her in that moment. Now again, they can all be at my son's sporting events and get along great,
Which
which
is
is yeah, it's
amazing.
wonderful, it's great.
Yes.
I really am happy about that. But it just took a little bit longer. And but anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I've always known my parents were always very
Okay.
supportive of it, and with my sister as well. She's also adopted, and it's just interesting. We can, nature nurture.
Hmm.
We were brought up in the exact same environment.
Hmm.
I always had a calling to know, and my sister wants nothing to do with
No
it. She
part.
has zero desire to know.
Interesting.
This is her family. And it's funny, when we talked about it one day, and she said to me, well, your family has always been defined differently. You were always close with us, but you were the closest with your friends. It's like you built that friendship group into a family, and they always took priority over us. And I never really thought about it that way.
Wow.
But that was her perception of how I'd grown
Hmm.
up and lived. And so she understood it, because she watched me always looking for more,
Mm.
whereas she was more content with what she had, I guess. I don't know
Yes.
if that's the right word, but
Yeah.
that's the right sentiment. So, anyway, it's just interesting how two people can be raised in the same environment and be so different
It's
in
so different.
how they view situations like
Right.
this.
And so my next question was going to be, how did your parents
Parents.
really respond? And they were tremendous along the whole
Yes.
way. Um, so your life now, because you're married with two children, what was your wife's reaction? What are your kids' reaction? Because
Yeah.
it's part of the story of their father,
Yep.
but unknown to them.
Yeah. So my wife was obviously very supportive. She, encouraged me to go. Uh, Again, I would have gone regardless, but
Hmm.
I was happy that she was on my side, minus the kidney thing. But I love her to death, but she doesn't understand it all, and I don't know that I can make her understand it,
Mm,
no matter how many words. And yeah, I can tell the story because it's a conversation that we had. But when I first found out that Dale had kidney problems, my mind immediately went to,
yes.
well, if I'm a match, then I have to do this.
Hmm.
And she could not wrap her head around it. She's like, that doesn't make it. You've never met this person. Like,
Yeah.
what do you, how can you be contemplating that? Like, he's not. And again, she was thinking more, what if something goes wrong? What happens to our
Yes.
family? And
Yes.
so I fully support that. But
Hmm.
I looked at her, I said, well, if your dad needed this, you wouldn't think twice about it
Hmm.
either. And I don't think she could understand how I could immediately flip to, well, this is my
Right.
biological father. That's my biological, this is my family as well. Like it just is.
Hmm.
Um, it just is. So I think she gets it now, or she's good at understanding it and trying to, but I don't know if she ever will, and until you're in that situation
Yeah.
and you have that, I don't know if you can put yourself in that position, but, um, so to answer your question, she's very supportive of everything. She's very welcoming of every family member that's come by. Like I said, one of my sisters was recently married,
Yes.
and so all the Edmonton folks were in town, and we went over
Nice.
and got to meet all of them. So my kids met them. My Natalie met them all, and I mean Natalie is as social can be. She can fit in absolutely anywhere, so she's great at welcoming people. And so anyway, it's been really good. My son gets it. He's 11, and he gets it, and he knows them all, and he. But my daughter, I still don't think she fully understands it. Like
Yes.
so I have a tattoo of a stork carrying a baby to represent my
Oh,
whole
wow.
adoption story, and so I think she gets it that I wasn't born from my mother, but I can't remember how it came up, but I said, well, what's Kathy to me? And she's like, well, Kathy's your cousin. I was like, no,
No.
no, that's not how that works. I mean, she's only 7, so I think
Yes.
she's still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, Kathy's my mother. Um, and so she gets it, but she doesn't
It'll
fully get it. I don't think.
take some
Yeah, in
time.
time. Just like I
Yes.
didn't know what being adopted really meant,
Right.
and when Michael Janu asked me about the orphanage, so it'll come. She'll learn,
Yes.
but so she does understand. And again, they haven't met the whole other half because those
Right.
people haven't been able to make it to Ontario, and I haven't been able to take my family there. So they get that dad's going through something, but they don't fully comprehend it, I would say.
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But they have, you now have what was a tight knit family to now a really large family.
I do.
And they now have the benefit of two incredible families that is um, an incredible community that they get to grow up in and meet all these people. And so the family that they know has just doubled
Yeah.
plus in
Yeah.
size.
It's funny. My when I was growing up, um, I had. I mean, technically, I had two grandmothers, one on each side, but one lived in England, and I think I met her once or twice,
Hmm.
and so she was never part of the family. And then my mother's mother we saw her all the time, but uh, and when my father's mother passed away, it really had no emotions because I was sad for my dad, but I really didn't know her. And then when my mother's mother passed away, obviously that was really sad because she was nanny and she was everything.
Hmm.
But I only have ever really had to go through that once. My children, both my parents are still alive. Both Natalie's parents are still alive. Now we have these extra
Oh, yes.
grandparents. What I
Yes.
still don't think they would refer to them that way,
Hmm.
but they're there
Hmm.
and they're younger and could possibly, this hate to talk like this, but outlive my biological or my
Hmm.
parents. And so like it's just I really think about this too often, but the loss my children are going to have to go through by having this big family
Mm.
is, I mean, my heart hurts for them.
Yes. That's an
I
interesting
still
way of
remember
thinking
being
of
in
it.
grade 5. There was a girl in a younger grade, and I walked by the office, and she was hysterical. And her grandfather had passed away, and I never want my children to have to go through
Mm.
that. Which obviously they're gonna have to go through it. Everyone does,
Yes.
but as my family gets bigger, these are the things I think
These are
about.
the
Is
things.
now
Yeah.
what? Now we're gonna develop these great relationships and have to
Yes.
lose these people, which makes it a little harder. Obviously,
Yes.
the silver lining is we're gonna have 40 years plus
Yeah.
with all these people, which will be great. But I think about that probably too
Too
often.
often.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you're now sort of, you've got this large family that are all sort of functioning together in an incredible way. But through all of it, I cannot imagine for sure the emotional toll, but there has to be a mental, a physical toll that it would take on you. And how have you muddled through,
I talk a lot about it.
which is really healthy.
Yeah. So I did. I mean, I sought professional help for a while because it
Okay.
was just, I mean, we went through a restructure at Adidas
Mm-hmm.
right at the same time. As all this was going on, we cut 50% of the headcount at Adidas Canada, and we didn't know for a long time
Mm-hmm.
what side we would be on. And then once we did, there was the survivor's guilt of knowing all your close friends that were leaving,
Yeah.
and then the chaos that ensued for the basically for the last 2 years of
2 years. Yeah.
how we run this business with half the people, but all the expectations of when we had all the people. So there was that. Uh, my wife and I fully tore down and renovated our house in
Oh,
the last 2 years, and then so it was all happening at once.
yes.
And yeah, it was just I I didn't know it, but I did know it. Like I knew I wasn't right,
Mm.
but I didn't know what to do about it. And so yeah, I spoke to someone, and he gave me a lot of confidence to kind of let a lot of it go, because a lot of it was outside of my control and it was not directly related to anything that I had done.
Mm-hmm.
It was just happening to me, and so that
Yes.
was really helpful. I share, I mean, moments like this, talking about it. I've
Yes.
told this story to every customer that I have. It became our lunchtime
Yep.
conversation over the last 2 years because, again, it's a really great story that ended really well.
Yes.
Not all of them do. Um, Unfortunately, I had a friend who I can't remember when I was in university, told me that she was adopted. I was like, great, you start whenever adopted people find each other, they love to share stories and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. And she told me that she'd found her biological grandmother and called. And when she called, her biological grandmother had told her that her father had murdered her mother. And that was, I mean, shocking,
Oh,
terrible story. But I'd never contemplated that they might
no.
not be alive. Like I
Yeah.
just figured they were out there doing their own thing. And
Right.
then you hear this, and you're like, oh, one terrible story, and then what does that mean for me? And so,
Wow.
yeah, wild. But it's those types of conversations and sharing your story that hopefully help others, help
Yes.
yourself. So my nephew, um, his so my cousin, not nephew, I guess my cousin's son. What is it? I don't know,
Yes.
first cousins. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that.
I'm not quite sure
Yeah,
the
I don't know how that
terminology.
works.
Yeah.
He's my cousin. Um, he never knew his father, and his father died when he was quite young. And then because he was from South Africa, his whole family was from South Africa, so he never met his father's side of the family.
Mm.
And so this is quite recent, but after I'd had my experience, he called me and he said, "Hey, they've just reached out to me. They want to fly me over to England because it's my biological grandmother's birthday and they're having a big celebration and I don't know what I should do."
Yeah.
And so I said, "I can't tell you what to do, but I can
Yeah.
tell you my story and it's ended quite well."
Yes.
And again, if you go there and it ends up that it's not what you want, you're an adult. You just get on a plane, you fly home,
And you,
you
yeah.
call it a day, right?
Yeah.
But you'll never know if you don't go.
Right.
And so I think anyone that I would talk to, I'd say if you ever come across an opportunity, like you don't know unless you try,
Yes.
and it won't always end up well.
No.
But if you have a good support system around you, like I have my parents and
Yes.
my wife and my kids and my friends, my coworkers, then you'll bounce back.
Yes.
And so that this whole time when I was doing it, it was scary. It was interesting. Again, it was like finding answers to questions I didn't even know I had. I'd do it again a million times over. But talking to people along the way, sharing my story,
Yeah.
hearing their advice, giving advice, it's just been really helpful and
That's amazing.
therapeutic.
Was one of your motivators of 23andMe to find out not only about the people and where they were, but also to find out your health history?
100%.
Okay.
So having two children, I wanted to make sure that one, I'm healthy and I'm going to live forever.
Yes.
But two,
That's the plan.
want to look out for whatever might be coming their
Mhm.
way. And I hated going every year to the doctor to be like, I don't know,
I
I don't
got
know anything,
nothing.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
Um, so that was, if nothing good had come out of it except for, hey, I'm your kid, can I have your health records? You don't have to have anything to do with me. That still would have been a win.
Okay.
It, now I know that there's, like in most families, there's lots of cancer and history of
Mhm.
different things happening. So it doesn't help my conversation when I go to the doctor every year, because now I'm like a multiplier of all these possible things that could go wrong. But at
Right.
least we know what to look for.
Right.
At least we know what to keep an eye on for the kids, which
Yeah.
is great. Um, and yeah, it's funny. I think the other thing that really in the last 10 years that motivated me was beyond just health. When my son was born, and again, I'm sure that all parents feel this way,
Mhm.
but for me, that was the first time that I had a blood relative that I could
Mm.
emphatically say,
Wow.
you belong to me and I belong to you and I exist in you and you exist in me.
Yes.
And as you hold your child for the first time, it's a wonderful feeling. But that's all that was going through my head at the time.
Mm.
And then it was like, I need more of this. It's like a drug.
Okay.
Um, and also it took us 3.5+ years to get pregnant with him. And so it was this journey that finally came to this end. And I was like, well, if we can get through that, I can get through whatever it's going to take to find the
To
rest
find.
of my family. And I owe that to you kids, from a medical standpoint, but also hopefully, um, down the road, you're filled with more people around you that
Yeah.
are just like you. But the funny thing is, I now know I don't think it matters.
No.
I always thought it mattered.
Yeah.
And now I don't think it matters. I think love is love, family is family. There's so many different ways to build that family. I happen to be very lucky where I have a mixture of both. Blood you can't pick. My parents picked me, right? And we would
Mm.
joke around. They always joke that I picked my sister because we're in the. My sister was quite sick when she was born, and so we knew we were getting her, but for 6 months she had to stay in the hospital. And so we went close to the time where she was going to be cleared to be picked up, and they brought her in. And my parents looked at me and said, "What do you think? Should we keep her?" And I said, "Yes." And so,
Oh.
so every time we would fight when we were young, my parents would be like, "Well, you picked her." To which, I mean, I did. So I told that
Yeah.
story at her wedding
Oh,
too.
that's
But
amazing.
yeah, so you don't. In theory, I was picked by these people. I know it doesn't work that way, but I was.
Yes.
And so, does that, not that it has more than being born to people, but you can be born to people and it's not as good as being picked by people.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, I think family is family, love is love, and it doesn't matter how it's built, whether it's your friends, your family, your coworkers, the people that you choose to put around you are what truly
Yes.
counts and who are your family.
Yeah. Is throughout this journey, you must have learned a ton about yourself as well. You certainly learned lots about your community and your family. And is there one salient moment of you saying, yes, I'm on the right track, or anything about yourself that sticks out?
Hmm. I think no, but not one moment, but I think something I've learned is that I am more resilient than I thought I was.
Mm.
And it's so easy to give up on things. And I think I did give up on this many times over the years because it felt hard. And I didn't want to put the time in, or really, I didn't want to risk the rejection
Yeah.
that could have come. And again, going back to the finding Dale all those years ago, I was more afraid of the rejection that might come from it.
Yes.
If I'd reached out that way, then when we finally connected. Um, but having that resiliency to follow it out, live through it, and find this family and bring my family along for the journey, I think has been a good lesson, and it helps me in all the things that I like to do too.
Yes.
When things get hard at work, when things get hard on a bike ride, great. Today I was on a bike ride with some friends. I was pretty tired, and right towards the end, there's this big, not big, it's very not big, but there's this hill over the train tracks that we like to push up. And today was my day to really go for it, and I really had no desire to do it. But I knew that the team was there to push me, so I jumped on it and went for it. And I think that type of, it's just little things, but that resiliency and that determination came from 46 years of wondering and following and taking this journey to where it is today. So that's probably
incredible.
something that's helped me the most, I would say.
Yes, that's amazing. All right, my last question for you, Chris, is what would be your words of wisdom for the audience?
Go for it. Whatever it is, go for it. What's the worst that can happen?
Wow. Okay. Very, very well said. So, Chris, I totally appreciate you coming on the podcast. But more than anything, I mean, your story is incredible. And I applaud you for telling it again and again and again, because it 100% makes a difference. And your vulnerability, your honesty, I totally commend you for going on the journey, but for sharing it with us. I'm truly humbled that you were here. So thank you.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Awesome.
If anyone listens to this and it resonates at all, then it's a
It's a
positive
win.
step in the right direction. And as I said, just go for it.
Go for it.
What else could possibly happen?
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope this story resonated and gave you something to reflect on. If it did, please share it with someone you care about, and be sure to subscribe so you can continue to hear more pivotal stories involving one question, one turning point, one powerful story. Join me next week with another guest on the Leslie Hawkins podcast.